Hello, everyone. Welcome in from high atop Michigan Stadium here. Anthony Broom with Ryan Van Bergen, former Michigan defensive lineman, here to discuss the 35-7 victory for Michigan over UNLV on Saturday in week 2 of the 2023 season. Similar to last week in a lot of ways, we'll get to it. We will get to the offensive and defensive takeaways, some of the things to clean up. But before we do that, we'll run through the scoring, how the score broke down for Michigan. Wolverines got on the board first with 7:06 to go in the first quarter on a 3-yard run from Blake Corum to go up 7-0 after James Turner's extra point. Corum got on the board again from 2 yards out with 14:56 to go in the first half to go up 14-0. Roman Wilson and J.J. McCarthy's strong connection continued. Those two guys connected for a 13-yard touchdown pass with 24 seconds left to go in the first half for Michigan to take a 21-0 lead into the second half of play, where, I didn't mention this, Jay Harbaugh, the interim coach for the first half, passes the baton to Mike Hart for the second half of the game. Roman Wilson and J.J. McCarthy connect again, this time on a 47-yard touchdown pass at 10:31 to go up 28-0. And then Corum finishes off his strong day with a 5-yard run after the extra point to make, Blake Corum scores a 5-yard touchdown. Michigan leads 35-0 after the extra point. UNLV gets on the board late with a 20-yard touchdown run in garbage time with Michigan's backups in. But all in all, solid effort for the Wolverines, 35-7 win. Michigan was able to rack up 492 total yards of offense, 313 yards through the air. We'll talk about that passing game again here in a second. 179 rush yards. Pretty clean performance once again as I welcome in my pal and co-host, Ryan Van Bergen. Ryan, welcome back. You were at the game today.
I was. Thanks for having me back, and got to see the boys play in person, and it was what it was supposed to be. Again, business as usual. Come take care of this opponent. I've heard people referring to these first 3-4 games as the preseason, and I don't know that I disagree. I think it has been an opportunity to see some guys play and put some other guys out with different combinations and see who's going to perform. And there's guys we know are going to perform, aka number 9, who's playing out of his mind, and guys that we're still kind of feeling out what's going to happen. But overall, I thought it was a really clean game and a really efficient and business-like demeanor from the Michigan Wolverines.
Absolutely. And we will get into those offensive and defensive takeaways. We'll discuss the things that we want to see them clean up after this game. We'll also get into your questions. So be sure to hop in the queue for those. We'll start starring those and get those in the chat as well. But before we do that, I want to talk about our friends over at My Perfect Franchise, the presenting sponsor of our Saturday post-game show here throughout the 2023 football season. You've heard us talk about them for a while. Are you a displaced corporate executive or wanting to put your career in your own hands? Are you an experienced entrepreneur wanting to diversify? Well, our buddy Andy Luedecke can help. Andy is a huge college sports fan, as you guys know, and a franchise veteran. Having owned multiple franchises and businesses, using his expertise, he helps others find their American dream through a very thorough consultation and evaluation process. Call Andy, put your life and career in your own hands. Best of all, his services are 100% free to you. So what do you have to lose? We have hopped on a couple Zooms with Andy as a company. Tremendous guy, tremendous partner to this website throughout the year. Going back to, I think we started with him sometime in the winter or the spring. Andy's been tremendous, great partner, as we said before, a big-time college sports fan. So his goals align with ours in terms of, following our teams and rooting them to victory and all that good stuff. So find your perfect franchise at myperfectfranchise.net. You can contact Andy at 404-973-9901. And again, over at the website here, if you're watching on the YouTube edition, you see it on screen right now. You could book some time with Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. So thank you so much to the folks over there. Ryan, let's start an offense in this game, and we'll kind of go position group by position group. And of course, it starts with the quarterback situation. J.J. McCarthy, again, just surgical. The ball barely touched the ground. 22 for 25, 278 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, 88% completion percentage, 207.8 passer rating, Also had 3 rushes for 38 yards. Listen, again, obvious level of competition caveats aside, this is a guy who is in complete and total command and control of this offense. And even on some of these plays that are well covered, I mean, he is throwing the ball and putting these passes in spots that no one else can get to them. And I think, based on what we've seen, again, East Carolina, UNLV, I get it. Everyone's going to scream from the mountaintops that that's the reason his numbers are the way they are. But this is how it's supposed to look against defenses that you're supposed to shred.
I think you have to kind of take a step back and look at where we were a year ago when we're having this debate of Cade McNamara or JJ McCarthy. They're splitting time at who's starting quarterback. Do you really think Cade, and I have nothing against Cade McNamara. I wish him well in his career moving forward at Iowa. I'm not one of those fans that harbors any resentment that he left. But I don't think you put Cade McNamara in position for JJ McCarthy in these first 2 games, and he comes away with the same stat line that you've seen JJ McCarthy be able to produce. And he does seem to have the entire offense on a string. He understands everything. There's so many times that I was, lucky enough to sit up high in one of the fancy seats. And there's so many times where he's throwing to Corum or Edwards in the flat, and there's a higher risk throw, but Roman Wilson has got leverage on a guy one-on-one deep. And if JJ puts the ball away from the defender, it might be a touchdown. Now the check down's there, and it's probably the right call to throw to that back. But there's so many times where he could uncork it and maybe make a big play, but he's making the smart play. And I think that's what we expect from him. And I think that there will be more downfield throws in the offense as we develop and get into the tougher part of our schedule. But he's so tuned in. He's so on time. His throws are, like you said, so well positioned. His placement of making sure the defender doesn't have an opportunity for it. You really can't ask for more out of the quarterback position. And I feel like this is the most set Michigan has been at the quarterback position, maybe as far back as when we had Chad Henne.
Yeah, the other thing too is I think, it's funny, the best 2 plays of maybe the last 2 weeks have been these touchdown throws to Roman Wilson. Last week it was the one that was just a dart, a dime. He freezes the corner, he fires one into the end zone. This week it was the 47-yard pass where pass protection has been pretty good, but that one, he had to rush up the middle. He kind of steps into the pocket, climbs the ladder, fires one over. It looked like Roman Wilson was, I forget what the play was, maybe a crossing route, but again, puts the ball exactly where it needs to go, kind of leads him a little bit. And when you're able to get that guy the ball, Roman Wilson, the ball accurately and in space with green grass, you see what he does. He does the rest of the work there. So, I mean, for me, I'm starting to kind of get used to it and come around to the idea that teams are going to be so focused on stopping this run game. And ECU made no bones about it. That's what they were going to try to do. Barry Odom, UNLV's head coach, said this week that they were going to have to stop and stuff the run and do whatever they could. And Michigan is probably as best positioned to go, okay, fine, we'll just throw the ball than they've been since, I don't know, insert era here. You invoked Chad Henne's name. I think JJ's easily their most talented quarterback they've had since then in terms of pure passing. But this is starting to round itself into a legitimate, balanced offense. And at some point, these defenses are going to have to give Roman Wilson a little more attention, Cornelius Johnson a little more attention. And that's where you're going to start getting some space for these backs who, we'll talk about them in a second, have kind of gotten off to a rough start. But passing game in general, I mean, it was 15 in a row last week. I think it was the first 13 he hit on this week. Just, as poised and as locked in as I've seen a Michigan quarterback this early into a year.
The other part that I felt was nice is we saw him use his legs a little bit today. I think we all kind of hold our breath when we see him use his legs, but he's such a threat when he takes the ball and rushes the ball. And you just need to do it enough, I feel like, for defenses to remember and remind themselves either that or pull it out when you can cause some real damage and no one's staying back for JJ. But he's got facets of his game he hasn't even been able to put on full display yet, and he's playing this well. I mean, he's probably going to climb the Heisman charts, I would say, after this performance. And to be honest, quarterback-wise, he's probably cementing himself as one of the best and potentially the best college quarterback this year if he continues to play the way he's playing.
Couple $1.99 super chats here from our friend Shane Johnson. Shane, we hope to see you in Houston. We keep saying that. JJ looks like Joe Montana so far, as I expected, with the sunglasses emoji. Shane also says this is the third all-time. I'm sorry, I'm getting confused on the reading of that there. I think the third time since the year 2000 with an 87.3 completion percentage, minimum 50 passing attempts. So, yeah, we've talked about too. I mean, that record, the passing record, 25 touchdowns in a single year, that's in jeopardy, man. I mean, he's right on pace for it right now, and I think he keeps playing the way he does. I mean, he might even have a chance to break that. Not early on this season, but maybe towards the back third of the year. But yeah, super impressive stuff from him. Let's move to those running backs. 179 yards on the ground, 5.4 yards per rush. I think for the most part, a step in the right direction compared to how things went last week. I think it helped that UNLV is just woefully unathletic up front, and Michigan's blockers seemed like they were having an easier time finding who they were supposed to get to, which was nice to see given that this is an odd front defense. They run a 3-3-5. Some of it's a 3-2-6. Offensive line, I thought, had a better day. Still some things, obviously, that you want to improve on there. But Blake Corum looked a little more like his vintage self. 15 carries, 80 yards, 3 touchdowns. Still kind of waiting for him to pop that big one, but it seems like it's close. But overall, a workman-like day. I think that's the second week in a row we've used this about the run game. But what did you see from those backs today?
Thought you saw more of the Blake Corum that you're used to seeing. And I think that I still maintain that there may be a misconception that he's some type of speedster or a guy that's going to run away from defenses. I don't see that as what Blake Corum is. Blake Corum is very quick in small spaces. He slides through holes that other guys don't get through, bursts through the second level, and then typically he's going to get caught on an angle. And so that's what I expect to see from Blake Corum. And between the tackles, especially on the goal line situations, I really liked how he runs the ball between the tackles, how physical he is, how strong he is. And he looks like he's back to 96, 97, 98% of what Blake Corum has always been for us. JJ just is casting such a huge shadow. I mean, at this point last year, we weren't talking about quarterbacks. We were talking about Corum and what he was able to do. But even though Corum, I think, is still having decent performances, it's just the shadow that JJ McCarthy is casting is too large. And it's got to be a good thing because people can't hone in and dial in. They're going to have to start doing something coverage wise to make it not so vanilla. So JJ can't just operate back there and be so comfortable, but their times will come. I really liked, cause I've been waiting. I feel like I've been singing this song for a while now, but I've been waiting for that package where Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards are on the field at the same time. And there was at least a handful of snaps today where you saw that. Cause I just think if you've got Roman Wilson, Cornelius Johnson lined up on the edges and you put Donovan Edwards in motion and the threat of Corum going the other direction and JJ's got the ball, what are you going to do as a defense? You pick up any third down you want with those two in the game. So that was exciting. Donovan Edwards, underwhelming stat line. I don't know. He had a hit that he got twisted and maybe just didn't feel awesome afterwards, and the game was pretty well in hand. So maybe we saw a little less of him than was game planned. But I don't have any concerns at the running back position. It should be an indicator that every coach, it's only 2 so far, but we know the other coaches know when they talk about how they're going to slow down Michigan, the first thing they emphasize is we have to stop the run because we'll just slowly kill you if you allow us to run the football. And kudos to the teams we've played. They're not letting us do it.
Yeah. You have to tip your hat to the other defense every once in a while. I think they've played 2 very well coached teams early on this year. And that, there's been a little bit of a chess match there and making those adjustments, and, credit to Sharon Moore too. I mean, having him back was, I think, a big deal this week because you're able to make those corrections up front in real time and give that instant feedback that, I mean, you just no disrespect to who filled in for him last week. You just don't get the same level of coaching from an analyst. So I want to park on this Donovan Edwards thing for a second because I'm not going to fixate on it. And it's 2 weeks. There's a lot still. I mean, both he and Corum are shaking off some rust from the offseason. Both had offseason procedures. Offensive line is still kind of figuring out. But, 6 carries for 9 yards. Now, he did have the 5 catches for 26 yards. Looks like he's going to be a pretty reliable check down for J.J. McCarthy, which is not unexpected at all. I mean, I think that's what – he's basically a slot receiver still learning how to play running back. But – he is a junior. This is his 3rd year under Mike Hart. I just need to see a little bit more from him. I can't, and these are the expectations he puts on himself, not necessarily what I expect out of him. I do expect better out of him, but when you come off of an off season where you make comments like you're going to revolutionize the running back position. You're going to that you're one of one. You're this star. You're one of the best running backs in college football. I need more from him, because right now he's a home run hitter, but he's not really hitting the singles and the doubles that you want to see from a guy, especially running him between the tackles. Now, part of it is that I think Michigan, at its best, that's a guy you're getting out to the edges and getting him in space. But Donovan Edwards has been, I think, what was it, 12 for 37 last week he had, and then the 6 for 9 this week. I don't want to make him a lightning rod, but need that guy to be better, because that's when he's on it, that's a guy that unlocks another dimension of this offense.
I think so. And I think that when he's at his best, he's so dangerous and so much of a concern for a defensive coordinator. And right now, what he's done to this point, he hasn't taken a step forward, in my opinion, from where he was after the Ohio State game and TCU game. And he was hurt, at that time. So I think we had higher expectations with him having another offseason, coming in 100% healthy. So much focus and emphasis is on Corum. So I think the expectations were high. I think he teed it up for the expectations to be high. But I agree. I think we need to see some more out of him. I think that if I were to evaluate where he could improve, is I think sometimes he's trying to hit the home run 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage instead of just allowing the blocks to develop and finding where that gap is and then hit it. But he gets the handoff and it's gas is all the way down. There's not much patience in the way that he runs the football. And I feel like that's a learned skill, but there's no one better at it than his current coach, Mike Hart. I mean, he was a tremendous runner, being patient and waiting for Jake Long to get somebody moved so he could make his runs. But I think it's reasonable to expect more from Donovan Edwards. I also think that it's coming as long as he stays healthy. But that's one area or one player that I feel like statistically has been underwhelming. And hopefully with more opportunities, we'll see more from him.
I want to move to the receivers really quick. Not a whole lot to talk about here. We talked about the passing game. JJ did a great job spreading the ball around again. 23, as a team, 23 completions to 8 different receivers. Again, Jim Harbaugh talked about when they, start watching the film on Sundays and into Monday, you kind of ideally want to come out of it and say, all right, Blake got his touches. Donovan Edwards got his touches. The wide receivers got their targets. Cornelius Johnson, I want to shout him out today. 5 catches for 82 yards on 6 targets. Donovan Edwards, obviously the 5 catches on the 5 targets. Roman Wilson, 4 catches, 89 yards, the 2 touchdowns, 5 targets. Tyler Morris, I thought, played really well today. 3 catches, 40 yards on his 3 targets. Quiet day from Colston Loveland, just 2 catches for 6 yards, but we don't think that's going to be the norm for him. But doing a really nice job of spreading the ball around. I think that outside of, and again, this new clock rule, they had 4 possessions in the first half. That's just different too. Like, there's just not enough time, it seems like, to put up these video game numbers. Now, again, you got to be a little more efficient. And the way that Michigan plays too, I mean, it's not an offense that's going to go out there and score 60 with these rules. I just don't see that unless you're throwing the ball 40 times and you're chucking it down the field. But overall, I mean, I think that our perception of, I shouldn't say a lot of people's perception of this game is going to be, oh, they didn't cover the spread. They didn't take care of the number, but they were up 35-0 after 3 quarters. That's basically the amount the starters played. I mean, over the course of an entire game, you're probably on track to score, in the mid 40s if those starters are out there. I don't have any issue. A lot of the things I see right now are kind of nitpicks and things I expect to get corrected. I think Blake Corum's going to get that gear back. I think Donovan Edwards is going to be a major weapon for this offense. The offensive line, I think, is rounding into shape, still in the process of finding that best 5. But, as we kind of wrap up the offensive part of the show, Ryan, I just don't have a lot to nitpick. I mean, it's been efficient, and they've taken what defenses have given them, and JJ's picking guys apart, and that's what you want to see.
I think the offensive line is probably one of the other areas where we're looking for a little bit more. And I think it's the normal flow and rhythm of starting a college football season that there's some offensive line miscues. But today, just like we saw in the first game, there were some times where our running backs are getting contacted behind the line of scrimmage. And that should never happen if your offensive line is all on the same page. And that happened a couple times where we're making jump cuts as soon as we're getting the ball handed off to us. Now, that's a product of getting reps as an offensive line and as a unit, but also I think making sure you understand what you're going to see from the opposing team. And Carolina, UNLV, these are not standard opponents for Michigan. Not that there's any excuses there, but they saw some things that they don't typically see, and they had to adjust. So I think the offensive line will be good. Their pass pro has been great. It's just the run blocking that's somewhat concerning, especially when we're in those need to run scenarios. And we're Michigan. If it's 3rd and 1, we're going to put our big boys up, and you're going to know it's a run play. And in those situations, it'd be nice to know that we're going to get the yards we need when we play quality opponents. And I don't know that we're in that position just yet.
Yeah, those situations were nearly automatic for them this year. I think at some point they'll be pretty close to that. I have no issue saying that this offensive line, I don't think it's going to be as good as the ones they've had the last 2 years, but I still think it's going to be pretty darn good. But overall, good day at the office, and we'll see what happens from there. But switching over to the defensive side of the ball, and a unique challenge this week, as you sort of pointed out. I mean, this is a UNLV team, runs a weird defense. They run the go-go offense, I believe they call it, where, they're using a lot of tempo. They are going to get to the line quick. You're not going to be able to do a ton of substitutions. They're going to run the ball and then try and take a shot on you. And this is I'm not going to speak for you, but this is a stat that I think you'll appreciate, Ryan. Michigan's top 4 tacklers today, all defensive linemen. Mason Graham, Jalen Harrell, Chris Jenkins, Braden McGregor, 5 tackles apiece. They had 5 sacks as a team on the day. Last week's performance, I thought they were pretty good last week. ECU's getting the ball out quick, but this week you saw that disruptiveness, you saw the explosion, and you saw it bears out on the stat sheet now with the tackles for loss and then also the sack numbers. So just go off on your boys up front now, Ryan.
Oh, Sack City. It was Red Bag Day. 5 sacks, like you said, in the first half, if I'm not mistaken. 5 sacks in the first half against a team that is typically getting the ball off. We talked about, that being the scapegoat last week, that, they didn't get any sacks because the ball's coming out so fast. This team also got the ball out pretty quick, and we're getting there. I think that's a big credit to the guys, continuing with their rushes. It's a big credit to the secondary. I mean, we're playing kind of with one hand tied behind our back, kind of not, with Will Johnson playing maybe 5 snaps, and then Rod Moore, we didn't see game action today. Page, again, I don't think played today. So we're 3 out of our 5 guys that are typical starters are not back there, and I didn't notice that they weren't back there. They were great in coverage, and the defensive line, I feel like, played really well. Mason Graham, we know that he's a special kid in the interior, and I think he didn't have the performance he was looking to have in his home opener. And I think today he did what he needed to do, finally forced a fumble. We didn't get it back, but he forced a fumble. Jalen Harrell seems to be emerging, which I thought he would be, as the guy that is that edge pressure guy that we're going to look for on 3rd downs of getting home. And I think he's just gotten better and better, and today was a really good performance with him. Chris Jenkins, the mutant, or whatever they're calling him, really like seeing him play, but he's a monster on the interior. A double team doesn't get him moved. Braden McGregor played a lot better than he has, and I feel like this has got to be his year. He's kind of been waiting to come on scene and have an emerging game, and I don't think this was it, but this was the first step in that direction. So overall, I mean, the defense is just Jesse Minter's defense. I love watching it. There's no big plays. We're just a wet blanket. You might have a spark pop up here or there, and then someone runs over and that's over. You're not doing that anymore. So super thrilled for our defense. Would love to see some turnovers get generated if I had to nitpick, but overall, all positions played a very solid, sound football game, and we can't ask for much more besides, not giving up the touchdown, but it's in the 4th quarter and you're letting some guys play football.
Did you ever play with a guy that was as big and as fast or as disruptive as a Kenneth Grant was? I think he's been – listen, we talk about all those other guys that we just mentioned. We talk about Chris Jenkins, talk about Jalen Harrell and Derek Moore, Josiah Stewart. I think through the first 2 weeks of the year, maybe this is a hot take, Kenneth Grant has been maybe their best defensive lineman. 2 third down pressures last week. This week, I think he had, a sack and a half, and was in there on a lot of plays. I mean, that guy he's a true sophomore, and there's just nowhere to go but up for him.
He reminds me of Alan Branch, who I didn't get a chance to play with, but as I was being recruited, got to know him a little bit and got to watch him play. And watching him play, it was just unfair because he's obviously bigger than almost everybody he's playing against, but then you see him get off the ball and he's quick and he's fast and he's an athlete. And someone told me he used to return punts in high school. Branch, not Kenneth Walker, but that's who I see body type and dominance of how he plays on the defensive line. And almost, I'm glad you said something because I almost take it for granted because he's just such a physical specimen that you better make an impact. How can you not when you look like that and you're out there? So you almost have this expectation that he's good for one solid pressure, one TFL, maybe some more on top of that, but he's been very consistent. I mean, we're good on the interior. We got three really good ones in Kenneth Walker, or not Kenneth Walker, but Walker, Mason Graham, and I can't remember the other guy when we had him pulled up. But I feel like he's going to continue to develop, and he's going to be a guy that plays on Sundays for sure.
Yeah, Chris Jenkins, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, probably as good of a defensive tackle, cluster of guys that they've had in a while. Like seeing a lot more explosion from that position too, instead of just guys eating blocks. And on the Grant thing, really quick. I mean, my last point on him is that we saw guys like Mozzie Smith and Chris Hinton are as good as it's been the last 4 or 5 years in terms of guys who have held down the middle of that defense up front. And it takes those guys they were both highly recruited, and sometimes it takes those guys 3-4 years to really put it all together. Kenneth Grant's a true sophomore. And like you said, I mean, inherently, when you move the way he does, when you're as big as he does, you're going to be disruptive by virtue of just being on the football field. But man, oh man, I mean, he looks like, for all this talk that there is about the guys that they'll lose off this team and this defense next year, I mean, he's going to be right up there in terms of one of their better players. But I want to go through some defensive stats here. I had them pulled up. That's bad radioing on my part. UNLV was 3 for 12 on third down, 0 for 3 on fourth down. Did force a fumble, didn't recover it. No turnovers. Again, that's almost had one. Another interception that was not quite an interception, but a nice athletic play from the Michigan secondary. I forget who it was. Maybe it was Keyshawn Harris, but the fact that those guys are in position to make those plays will lead you to believe that it's going to happen for them at some point this year. And then, of course, we're going to see them get Will Johnson mixed in a little bit today. That was nice to see. You didn't have Makari Page on the field. Rod Moore dressed, but he didn't play again. Again, I'd have to imagine. We talk about how these have been essentially preseason games, and it's been right for Michigan to treat them as such. But I kind of feel like next week is, you're under the lights, 7:30 game. There's going to be the light show, the new lights that they installed here at Michigan Stadium. Big Ten openers the next week. I would have to think next week is the dress rehearsal, and a lot of these guys who are kind of on the fence will get in there for more extended action. But outside of Amori and Walker, the injuries they have right now, not really. I don't want to say they're not a big deal, but more bumps and bruises than anything. Nothing seems too long term. But yeah, any other lingering defensive thoughts and again, we will get into your guys' questions. We have a few starred here to get into, but chat's wide open right now. So questions, comments, we will get them starred and we will get them on the show. But Ryan, your final thoughts on the Michigan defense?
I thought everybody played really well, but something we don't talk about is the linebackers. I feel like UNLV really challenged the linebackers in some of their eye discipline and some of their zone drops, and I thought they played really well. I think that Junior Colson is an elite talent at linebacker. Michael Barrett always knows where to be and makes sound tackles, and I think Ernest Hauserman, I can't guess the last name, but
Hausman, yep.
Hausman, I thought played another solid game. Had one time in coverage and I thought he was a little bit too distant. But, I mean, for the most part, these guys seeing weird looks from UNLV. I don't know if everybody saw what their backfield looks like sometimes, but they have some very unique formations offensively that they run a lot of option and triple option looks and triple option pass, and gave the linebackers some things that they had to really play disciplined football. And you would have noticed if they didn't, but you didn't notice, so they did. So they played a really solid game. And linebackers, as much as you want to talk about everybody on defense contributes, linebackers are your quarterbacks. So if your linebackers are playing well, typically the other position groups are going to come along with them.
All right, well, let's move into questions. This is from Babylon 1985, who says, both Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards looked like they were jogging out there. Is that intentional? I'll just say quickly, my view of that is that I don't how do I want to put this? I don't think that they are jogging. And I don't think that it looks like they've lost a step. I really just think that they kind of they're just not back quite to 100% yet. Offensive line, that's a very symbiotic relationship. I don't think those guys are treating it as a walkthrough, certainly with Corum. I don't think Edwards is either, but I just think that things are still a little bit sloppy there. That's all.
I didn't play running back. I got very limited reps through my peewee time in football playing and being able to handle the football. But what I think could be an issue that they're going to have to figure out how to get through, and wouldn't be hard to work through, but they both know that they're going to get a little bit more limited reps because of the other guy being there and the talent that they have. So I could see it being a thing where they're a little bit slower when they get the ball handed to them, or they're in a rush, like I was talking about with Donovan Edwards, because they're looking for that home run, because they don't have as many opportunities. And when you're looking for the home run, sometimes the home run doesn't reveal itself till you're 5 yards downfield, 7 yards downfield, then you make a cut. So I think that might be one factor contributing to the lack of production for both of them is go get your 5, go get your 7, your clean 7, and then see if there's a move to be made to get the home run. But don't look for the home run the second you've got the ball put in your hands. And I'm not saying that I see that exactly, but I do think that that's an element that could exist and something that could be a factor holding them back from getting what they may be able to get otherwise.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, you jog in this sport in a college football game. I don't care if you're playing UNLV or Ohio State or Georgia. If you're not moving at full speed, someone's going to decapitate you. So I don't see that as an issue with them right now. Again, it's just haven't quite been up to their standards. And again, I think there is a lot of big game hunting going on right now instead of just play the game. Make your read. Find the hole that you need to hit in order to get in the open field and make your plays from there. So we'll see. Again, 2 weeks in, I thought we'd be a little more ahead of the curve in terms of what we've seen out of those guys, but I have very little concerns about those two. So we'll see what happens. They played a lot of football. They've got a lot of tape that would suggest that we know what the norm is when they're going well. So this one's kind of a two-parter. I'll go to Timothy Brantz first, who says, backup quarterback situation is concerning. And I would agree with that. Right now, and again, part of it is that J.J. McCarthy is as good as he is. There's going to be a drop-off if that backup has to come into a game and play meaningful snaps, especially given the fact that right now it looks like they're kind of trending towards being pass first, at least through 2 weeks. But yeah, I'm not Davis Warren hasn't really done a lot to turn heads. Jack Tuttle had a nice run to start the game or to start his time out there. And then, he almost gets decapitated on the sideline and comes out of the rest of the game. Jaden Denegal did some things. Surprised that we didn't see Alex Orji. We'll talk about that here in a second. But backup quarterback, I mean, typically it seems like historically Michigan has kind of had someone to bring in that, maybe they're not quite ready to go right now, but you're confident that this guy is going to be, if not your starter next year, compete for that job either next year or a year down the road. And if JJ McCarthy looks the way he does right now, I don't know if he's here in 24, even if he is, I don't know that his successor is on the roster right now.
I would agree. I think that's a astute observation, and I would agree that the backup quarterback situation is a very big concern, especially the way JJ plays. He's a gunslinger. He's a wild child. There's going to be a time where he gets a hit or something that doesn't feel great, and he's going to need some relief. And right now, God forbid that's on the road at Penn State or at home versus Ohio State or something like that, because the drop off right now is, private jet G6 riding first class. And then we get our backup in and we're riding Spirit in the back near the toilets. That's the drop off that we have from starting quarterback to backup quarterback. And, I'm not trying to take anything away from those guys. I would be very concerned as to the production of our offense if JJ McCarthy wasn't running it. And, as far as I know, they're still practices left to compete and reps to be had, and one of these guys should emerge as the clear backup. But I would also agree with you and would love to hear if you have any more information on what is the deal with Alex Orji. I want to see this kid on the field. I want to see an offense featured with this athlete at quarterback that could be a totally different package. I think that could complement JJ McCarthy. But I don't know if they're keeping it tight-lipped or if I'm just not reading the right press releases. I don't understand why Alex Orji hasn't seen the field.
Yeah, it's odd. And again, Leo asks, is Alex Orji hurt? He didn't get into the game. That's 2 weeks in a row. Shab fam, hello Shab fam, good buddy of the show, says Orji is an athletic freak. Is he just a terrible passer or something? I don't know what's going on there. I wish I had intel to share. I'm sure, we'll do some digging on it, but sitting here as we record this, 7:50 p.m. the night after the game or the night of the game, I don't know. And again, I mean, you talk about Penn State or Ohio State losing the quarterback. I mean, right now, we've seen it before. I mean, I think this is the year after you were there, but Michigan's gone to Nebraska before and gotten its quarterback knocked out. And the film showed what it did. There was a major drop-off from Denard Robinson to Russell Bellamy. And I think that they have better pieces than that right now, ? But yeah, you got what, because at some point, maybe JJ puts his shoulder down and his helmet gets knocked off. Well, guess what? You got to come off the field for a snap. And, as we've seen at times, think of the Michigan State game in 2021. Cade has to come out of the game for a snap. JJ comes in, fumbles the football in a pretty key situation in that game. So again, not going to sit here and linger on it on a day where, Michigan wins and you're 2-0 and things look pretty darn good, but it is something to think about that, there's not as much clarity there as I thought there would be right now. And maybe who that number 2 guy is winds up rotating throughout the year. But right now, Alex Orji, I know this, if he's healthy, and I don't know that he is hurt, but if he is healthy, what he does well, at least kind of complement, you can change what your offense looks like. He maybe complements that run game a little bit more. And, you have guys start cheating up and then maybe you pop a shot down the field. I think what I've seen in warmups and in the bit of action we've seen, he's got a live arm. He could throw the ball, 80 yards down the field, but you got to be able to put some touch on it. You got to be able to be accurate, make the right reads, make the right throws. And I think there's something to the fact that we don't hear whenever we have the Alex Orji conversation. It's not about, oh, well, how does he factor in the quarterback race? It's, oh, well, let's make him a jumbo kick returner, or maybe he's a running back. Maybe he's a gadget guy in the end zone. So again, I think the fact that, again, I don't know what's going on with him right now, but the fact that we haven't heard his name more as it pertains to the backup quarterback situation kind of speaks for itself, I guess. I don't know how else to put that. This one is from, I like this one, from AO_KO. He says, do you think they will pull Jake Thaw from punt returns? Tyler Morris looked more comfortable fielding kicks. I do not, similar to how Caden Colazar was handling punt returns, I think 2 years ago, I do not think that will last. Someone's going to rise up and take that job. It's either going to be probably a freshman or a somewhat inexperienced guy. And Carmelo English did a little bit of it last week. Tyler Morris handled it later in this game. And I want to give Jake Thaw some credit too. I think he did have a nice return earlier in the game. But with what I saw from Morris, I'd have zero qualms about putting him out there.
I thought so. I thought he looked a little bit more twitchy and a little bit more explosive with the ball in his hands. And, I think that he's a guy that might be able to break one open. And that's what you need at that position, is someone who can change the game and take care of the football. And I think he should get some more looks because he looked very good today. And someone's got to show up out of that position in that position and look explosive and look dangerous and look like a threat. And we've got so many athletes on this team and so much depth, so all over the place, that there will be a guy. And I think they're taking the approach of giving everybody some opportunities. And I think that Tyler Morris today did really well with the opportunities he got.
I'm gonna do last call for questions here. There's a couple in the queue I want to get to, but first we'll take this one from Adam Shepherdson. He says, is there any injury news on Darius Clemens? I still think he can be a weapon. Also, our wide receivers and tight ends haven't consistently been blocking great. It's kind of concerning, especially CJ on the Loveland end around. I'll just address the Clemens one first. He was on the injury report that was released before the game. I don't recall seeing him out there. I think late in the game it was like Samaj Morgan and Fred Moore and someone else. The name escapes me, but I don't remember seeing number 0 out there on offense. And again, he's kind of was banged up a bit in camp, played last week, but again, still on the injury report. I'm not really sure, but Ryan, I want to focus on this one for you. Wide receiver, tight end blocking, something that Michigan often says, no block, no rock. And obviously guys are getting the ball because JJ's slinging it around the yard the first couple weeks. But again, I would agree, a bit to be desired there as well.
I would say that. I would also say the receivers are suffering from the same situation that the offensive line is, in that teams are geared into stopping the run and making sure these guys stay contained. And so they're going up against a guy that is likely keyed in on run as a corner or as a safety. And that's a lot tougher job when the guy across from you is right or guesses right or knows tendencies and knows that the run play is coming. So I think that there's more to be desired, but I also think that the development of the Michigan passing game will continue to get these guys better opportunities, even in blocking, because the defense isn't going to know what's coming. And I also will say, because as I watched that end around, I was like, that was a weird play design, but I'm convinced that the Loveland end around was a setup for another play that they run off of that, because I was talking about it as the play developed. As much as I like Loveland, he might be the slowest skill guy out there, including JJ. So why was he the one getting the ball on the jet sweep when anybody else would be a better athlete with the ball in their hands? But the next series, I believe, was JJ's big run, and it was the exact same setup, and that made more sense. Put Colson Loveland as the lead blocker. So I'm not concerned about our receivers and tight ends. I think that our offensive line needs to get a little bit more secured, and the tight ends and receivers will do an adequate job at the very worst.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. It's like, why is, think back to the TCU game, as painful as that is, and then think back to this game. Why is Colston Loveland the trick play, weird wrinkle guy all of a sudden? It's kind of wacky, but Sharon Moore was back today, of course, and that leads into the question from Schaub Fam, another one from Schaub Fam, who says, did you guys see any difference in offensive play, gameplay with Sharon back as the offensive coordinator? I think from a passing perspective, I saw pretty much a continuation of what we saw last week. Like the little wrinkle we got right off the bat with Blake Corum as a check down guy. I think that's establishing him as a threat to catch the ball was fun too. I would say better results in the run game. There were a couple of more, saw a little more creativity or attempts at creativity in the run game. Speaking of guys that you don't see trick plays run for a lot, I think that's the first time we've ever seen Cornelius Johnson take an end around at Michigan, and that worked out fairly well. So, yeah, I think that to their credit, I think the offensive identity that they established last week more or less stayed intact. But obviously having more back, the value there is the real-time feedback, the communication. It's just one more piece in that chain of command that gets back to normal as we get one more week to serve of this Jim Harbaugh situation. But yeah, thoughts on what he brought to the table?
I really enjoyed and thought our offensive play calling has been solid for both games that we've opened up with. I think we have a good balance of run and pass. I think we've got a great mixture of formations. We're under center and we're in the gun, 50-50, I feel like, and we play action out of under center. We run the ball out of shotgun. If you're a defensive coordinator, you probably have some long nights in the week leading up to playing Michigan. And, Sharon Moore, I think, does a tremendous job. I think he's going to be a head coach in the near future, or at least a prospect of a head coach in the near future. And I also think that they have the benefit of this offense having so much talent all the way around that they could roll a randomizer on the play sheet, run that, and it's probably going to work.
Not only is he a likely future head coach, he will be the head coach next week as the wheel of interim coaches comes to a stop after next week. Sharon Moore gets the nod. Obviously, Jay Harbaugh, Mike Hart did today. Jesse Minter did last week. Let me check the question queue here. We have one more left, and I think that's what we're going to end on. Just a quick one here. Where did it go? Oh, Courtney Harper asks, where is Ladarius Henderson? Yeah, that's been interesting too, because he comes over from Arizona State in the offseason. From everything we heard, was essentially maybe not written in Sharpie, but written in pencil as the team's starting left tackle. And wasn't with the team in the spring, didn't get with the team until fall camp. And Jim Harbaugh's talked about using the quote-unquote Michigan method and letting these position battles play out into the season. It was the same 5 starters on the offensive line today. Carson Barnhart on the left, Miles Hinton on the right side. In fact, Trente Jones was out there too as an extra blocker. I don't know where Ladarius Henderson is. I think I expected that Michigan's best 5 was going to include him in it, but I haven't seen him out there. And I don't know. I guess what I'll switch it to is this, Ryan. I mean, of this starting 5 that's currently out there, do you see a road for them to be their best 5, or should this competition still keep rolling along?
I do feel like I see Miles Hinton struggling in run block every now and again. Great pass protector, but I do see times where he doesn't get any movement off the line of scrimmage. He's in a single with a guy that's undersized, and we should be winning that matchup. So I'd like to see if anyone can get into that spot and what kind of run game production, because maybe he's the best we have, but there's been times where I thought that there's more to be desired from him in run blocking. And it's tough to see the center, but I also think that we're definitely missing Olu from last year. And I don't know who the backup would be or what the competition's like at that position, but I knew at the tackle position specifically, we had a little bit more depth. So if the run game doesn't come together more, I think that the first experiment would be, who do we try at right tackle?
We'll see what happens. Next week will be pretty telling. Like I said, I think it's going to kind of be the dress rehearsal for this football team. But, we do have one more question, and this one is specifically addressed to you, Ryan. So another one from Adam Shepardson, who says, RVB, would you prefer a one-on-one rush, or did you like the rushing games? And do you honestly think this team should do more or less?
I think it's all about the variety, as much of a corny answer as that's going to be for you, Adam. But if you go straight at a guy every time, he knows exactly how to set up on you. But if he's got the risk of getting ear holed by your 3 technique, because you could run in a twist game, it slows him down and makes my one-on-ones better. So for me, it was all about making sure that there was a mixture, making sure they didn't know what we were doing, because the second they know what you're doing, it's a lot easier to set on you and get themselves into a position that's better. So for me, it was all about variety. Move me around. Don't just make us run vanilla, and give us an opportunity. And that's something that I think these guys will get to. I don't know that they have it yet because they're still kind of growing and maturing. But as you get later in the season, I had the green light from Madison. Like, you think there's a twist available? You think you have the slide going away from you? Or you think you have the man side of the protection? I trust you. Make a call. Call what you want. And so we did. And there was a lot of times that you don't know what would have happened if you went straight, but we called a game and came away with a sack. So I think that the variety is the spice of life that you need there on the defensive line. And I think you saw a good mixture of that today. And the biggest thing is that would be a concern, which I didn't see today, would be, are you seeing guys not winning in one-on-one scenarios when you call the straight rush? And we saw guys winning on edge today. The games got home, but so did the one-on-one rushes. So any concerns I had about pass rush after week 1 have been settled, and still waiting to see more. It's early, but we've got guys that can rush the passer.
And doing it against opponents that you should absolutely do it against. And then the dimmer switch will get a little more, the lights get a little brighter. And I can tell you right now, they have the lights on at the big house. I'm up in the coach's box. They just flipped these lights on. I could tell you they're brighter because they're flashing right into my eyes. So that'll be something to watch for next week. But I can already kind of see the comment section now on these videos and on the message board, whatever. Oh, those guys were super negative after a 4-score victory. Listen, I'm not going to sit on this show and tell you that after beating UNLV by 28 points in week 2, you're winning the national title. I like what I've seen from this team. I think that there's more to unlock with this team. And overall, I'm pretty encouraged. I'm pretty darn encouraged by what we see. And I think the best part about it too, Ryan, is that we know that the things that they need to clean up, they are completely capable of doing, and they have the personnel to do. So through 2 weeks, I mean, if I had to grade them, I'd throw a solid B+ on them. But when the starters have been in there for the first 3 quarters of these first 2 weeks, it's been dominant. And I won't make excuses for them. They haven't been perfect. I think the clock rule certainly kind of limits at times how many offensive possessions you're going to get. But overall, I mean, there's not really a whole lot to harp on or complain about.
I agree. And if my perception seems negative, I apologize. I just like to see where there's opportunities to improve. We can sit here and talk about how great everybody is and kumbaya and all that stuff. But if you're a competitor and you want your team to be the best in the country, you're going to look at where can we be better? And that's what the coaches are doing. That's what the players are doing. No specific player would I want to throw under the bus or anything like that. It's just when you see opportunities that maybe this team could improve, that's what the show's about, is talking about those things. So I enjoy it. And I honestly think this still, preseason hype was very high, but this very well could be. I haven't seen anything that says that this team isn't capable of going to the national championship, winning another Big Ten, beating Ohio State again. Those things are all very much on the table. And I think we just want to see things get cleaned up to secure that future, and who knows? This team very likely could be number one, number two team in the country. We won't find out against Bowling Green, but we'll get a little bit more of what this team's about under the lights.
Well, we'll see what happens against Bowling Green. Indeed, this will be a late show next week, of course, with the night game 7:30 at the Big House. Pray for your fellow beat writers and journalists out there. It'll be a late night, a big time iced coffee day for me. Just speaking for myself, but that's going to do it for our show today. Like and subscribe to if you're watching on the YouTube channel or listening in a podcast feed. Subscribe for more of what we have to offer here at the Wolverine. Postgame shows, of course, within the first, within usually about a half hour of each game ending, maybe a little bit quicker for the road games because I won't be doing as much travel this year. But great stuff as always. Ryan Van Bergen will be with us every week. If you're not a subscriber of the on-site content yet, right now we're running a deal where you get $1 $1 for your first month's access as a new subscriber, or 25% off an annual subscription. So head on over to thewolverine.com and check that out if you haven't already. A lot of great stuff coming from the guys in our team over there. So again, thank you so much to Ryan Van Bergen. Thank you to our producer Megan behind the scenes, and thank you so much to you guys who watch live and take time out of your Saturday night to hang out with us. And for those of you, of course, listening after the fact, maybe as you're driving home on Saturday from the game or making breakfast on Sunday morning, we love and appreciate all of you. So for everyone here at the Wolverine, I'm Anthony Broom. Michigan wins 35-7 over UNLV. On to Bowling Green. Thanks for listening.